Hey, friends, and welcome to the Next Best Thing podcast. I'm your host, Andrea Cline-Thomas. Now, I'm here to help you live a life that you design instead of blah, 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 blah. Today, we are not going with the status quo because we are not in a status quo kind of moment. It is a new day. It's a new day. And so I've just been thinking so deeply about this. How do we meet this moment? And I think we have to begin by clearing the tables or flipping it, whatever you prefer, right? This week, we're really going to talk about our next. And we need to start with a completely blank slate. And by we, I want to be very clear that I'm talking about the 85% of Black voters and the 91% of Black women. 91%. Congratulations. We're free. And I mean that wholeheartedly. We're free from the rearing that had us centering everybody else. We're free from calculating others' fragility before taking action. We're free from the idea that we just need to get that one more degree to be seen by others as qualified. We're free from speaking up in the meetings on behalf of the greater good. And instead of getting an audible cosign in the moment from our colleagues, by the way, who had plenty to say at the water cooler about this very issue, instead they send you a private text message. We're free from advocating for the things that don't really impact us, but we are very clear that it's on the wrong side of history. We're free from trying to meet everyone else's demands of who we should be with just the hope that a modicum of that will be returned by seeing us, by possibly protecting us in the long run. Please hear me. We are free from all of those expectations. The hope, though, remains. It remains in yourself and in the community of your choosing. This is the time, I believe, to get into the driver's seat. The rose-colored glasses, well, those are crumbled beneath your feet. And I get it. While not surprised, it is a huge blow. I used to always say, well, your next is within reach. Your next is within reach. But I now feel like I have to amend that and say, your next is here right now. I think this moment in history requires us to reframe a lot of things. But what it does not have to do is thrust us out of character or entice us to embody the visceral hostility we are often bludgeoned with. Look, I have a whole lot of unanswered questions too, with real life fears. I mean, I knew my Social Security was probably out the door, but now it feels like it has just evaporated in smoke. Is it safe to have children? Like, for real? Like, is it? Does it make sense to continue living in New York City? Am I going to have to go get a job? Like, how am I going to deal with healthcare? I'm not the everything is just going to be all right type of person, right? Holler around and run around the church because a prosperity gospel has been preached. Okay, gaslighting my real world circumstances to appeal to the low hanging fruit of my emotions. And all the God will provide, he's still on the throne, people. Amen. Amen. Well, also, God has some real trifling, low down, dirty children, both in the Bible and in present day. That's also what I know to be true. A provider and trifling children. Two things can exist at the same time. And for all the people who say, well, it doesn't even matter, like government doesn't even have a role in your life, lest we forget that a law was necessary for me to go to integrated schools. A law was necessary to allow me to eat in restaurants. A law was necessary to allow me to vote. A law was necessary to allow me as a woman to have my own bank account without a husband. A law was necessary for a lot of things, a lot of ways that I and you move through the world. And lots of people have benefited from the fight who need to be reminded about the history of how they are even able to vote so clearly against their own self-interest. But that's another story for another day. I could go on, but I'm not here for a civics lesson. I'm here to consider the biggest, most monumental question I think of our time, and that is, what's next? It is a question that we have asked since day one of this podcast. It is the foundation of the podcast, but it feels like in this moment, it has taken on new urgency. Just for clarity, I am both grounded and rooted. I am pessimistic, realistic, and hopeful because I just don't have it in my spirit to go play small and lay down and die. That's why I think we need to clear the table and start with a new slate and make some new calculations because it has become clear the game has changed. We aren't playing the same game. And if you try to bring that old game into this new game, you're not going to make it. We got to get up on what this new game is. We got to get up on what these new rules are, not to keep us small, for assimilation purposes, but to play the game so we can win, that we can center ourselves and win. But I think even before we go into that, we got to figure out what we've been carrying around, right? All this foolishness, we got to take some heavy bricks out of our backpack right now. And I think that this is an equal opportunity activity. I think that we have to not just center ourselves, but be fiercely loyal to self-preservation in this moment. We need to summon our inner Harriet Tubman and leave folks behind, right? People who don't want to learn, who don't want to grow, who don't want to change their harmful behaviors or perspectives. Bye. Bye. Relationships that are not reciprocal, gotta go. Anything that keeps you stuck or that you would describe as a dead end is out. Unapologetically, no sorry, out. There's no reward for being the martyr on the Titanic. Okay, dead weight has got to go so you can save yourself because this is real life. Now that we've created some capacity and restored some of our energy, now what? That's what I was asking myself. And I've been scrolling online, the journalist in me, just wanting to get a sense of how people are processing and what their thoughts are. And I found that the people who were just unbothered by any of this fall into two categories. Well, maybe more, but I'm just gonna talk about two. One, they have the privilege, right? So it actually won't bother them because they have the privilege. Two are the people who it will actually impact, but they're too delusional and don't have the critical thinking to like understand how government works and how they voted on one issue, but don't realize how other issues are going to impact their very lives. So it's like delusion. Those first two is not whatever, right? I'm not even thinking about that. The last group was rich folk. I saw these people who own like multi-million-dollar businesses because my feed is curated with business owners, and they are unmoved. And I said, wait a minute. Lesson number one for myself. Oh, after the rage subsided, I said, oh, in this news, I got to make a whole lot more money, and I got to keep a whole lot more money. The promises that were made on this campaign trail, um, by economists' estimation, will mean that things will become more expensive. And so there's that. Also, the policy changes will mean that there will be diminished access possibly to things that we need, right? Whether it be healthcare or other things that we need. How do you circumvent both scenarios? Money. Money buys access. Um, Money circumvents higher prices. So I was thinking, okay, so what does this mean to myself? It means that I have to remind myself that I'm running a whole business and not a charity. And sometimes I get real generous of just giving stuff away. Girl, you can't afford it. Charge. I need to organize my money from better documentation to forecasting. And I'm getting help in this. This just reinforced it. I was already like, girl, you got to get yourself together. I need to address my mindless spending and create a real budget. I need to create more aggressive investment strategy in the stock market. I already have, a lot in the stock market right now, and have always been really aggressive, but I need to be even more aggressive because the stock market will probably continue going up. Life insurance, wills. I need to just tighten up and get my financial house in order. That is the first order of business of like, get it together, girl. That's what I told myself. That's what I wrote down. I literally wrote it down in my journal. I got to ask for more and go after bigger contracts. And so I told you my business. So the question is, do you need to start cultivating another source of income? Are you way too loyal to your company to where if you lost your job today, would you be screwed? If the answer is yes, you got to start cultivating another source of income or asserting your thought lead and it might be an and or situation, it's your life, asserting your thought leadership. So to improve your like, know, and trust factor, and people can know what they can come to you for. And maybe you can monetize your expertise in a very specific way. Or do you need to expand your network? Right. And start getting to know a whole lot more people. If there is volatility in the workforce, and the bigger your network, the more opportunities just from a mathematical equation that you'll have access to. So those are all of the calculations that I'm considering. But also add to that, what do you want? What do you want? What do you love? What lights you up? And how can you do more of that? The thing is that money just gives you options to do what you want. So you're not beholden to everything else. But what are you going to be working for? Like, what is it that you want? What's the point? And how can you be in a space that lights you up more and more and more and more? That's why this podcast was founded. It was created was because of that idea, that believing that you can be in the pocket, you can be in your bag consistently, not just on vacation, not just, you don't have to like live for vacations, that you can actually live your life joyfully and be fulfilled consistently. And I believe that's still the case, but it needs to be defined. And I don't want this movement of Black women like wiping their hands, being like, you're on your own, to mean that we're a divorcing community. We're not. What we are doing is that we're untethering ourselves from the abusive relationship that lacks reciprocity. How does this benefit me? Should be the first question that we ask ourselves. And it shouldn't be selfish. It shouldn't be considered as selfish. I would like us to ask more, how does this benefit me? And if you don't know directly how it benefits you, to feel comfortable just not doing it. Because why? Community is about curation of shared beliefs, values, and effort. And to that end, I hope we can become even more intentional about this and continue supporting each other in our gifts, like-minded people coming together who have shared beliefs, values, and effort. But with this, I will say, what does that look like? And what does community look like? I don't think we need to redefine community, because we are a people who are not void of community, that we have always existed in community, and we have always relied upon community for our self-preservation, right? And our collective preservation and wholeness and endurance, quite frankly. But being in business also has just taught me how, one, incredibly hard it is, and just what it means when somebody invests their money and their time in you. And so during the next 4 years, it might be really, really hard for Black-owned businesses, especially when it comes to access to capital, because they're going to go after that. Like, it's really, really going to be vital to, if your value system is aligned, to support those small businesses that align with your values. For instance, I was just in Sephora yesterday, and they were having a sale, and I beeline to Danessa Myricks Beauty. If you don't know about Danessa Myricks Beauty, it is sorcery. I've never loved a makeup brand more. It is, nothing has ever matched my skin so beautifully than Danessa Myricks Beauty. But I needed a few things, so I got like extra concealer, and I needed some other things. But I went to Pat McGrath, Ami Collet, took a look there, like, to support these very specific brands who care about me, right? If you have, the dress I wore yesterday was Harbison for Banana Republic, a Black designer. My favorite dress. Supporting people because the colors were beautiful. And I know he had my chocolate skin in mind when this man made this dress. Like, supporting who supports you and really trying to recirculate money within the community, I think is going to be really important, really intentional. When you go out to eat, it doesn't have to be all the time, but I think just being as intentional as you can. Is there a Black restaurant that you can go to and support them? Like, it means so much, because business is so incredibly hard. If somebody is doing great work and you like their newsletter, please sign up for their newsletter, because these social media platforms might be start deprioritizing certain people's content, right? Which is making them hard to, get out there, get more eyeballs, sharing, their work with other people. Like, they're just all different ways to support, both financially and otherwise. And I think it's going to be really, really crucial in the years ahead. And another thing, I've been doing a lot of thinking, guys, this week, is around health. So if you've been listening to the podcast, or, we are following each other on social, on Instagram, I've been sick for about a month. I am finally feeling a lot better. I still have this lingering cough that feels like it's going to clear up within the next week or two. So thank goodness for that. But it has me really thinking, because it all came because I ran myself into the ground, right? Like, just being completely transparent. Like, this is really hard. This year has been super duper gratifying, but it's also been really, really hard. And there were 2 weeks there in October where I was like totally knocked out and just miserable. And you can't do anything if you're unwell. You can't do anything if you're unwell. And so now it just has made me make some very specific decisions. It's reaffirmed that I need to have much stronger boundaries when it comes to work. And then I need to start removing some of these excuses that I had. In December, I'm going to get back into the gym, expanding my lung capacity, getting my stamina back, starting to lift weights again. I have to get healthier, and I have to make it a priority. For me, it was already going to be hard to fulfill what I had hoped for myself. But it feels like, and I don't know this to be true 100%, but it feels like it's going to be even harder. And so I need to be in shape. I need to be in shape. I need to be well. It's important to make all of your doctor's appointments right now, as soon as possible. Get that blood work done. Get your mammograms, get your scans, have them take a look at your fibroids. Like, for real, y'all, is it time to get a therapist? Tomorrow, we aren't in the season where we can wait for tomorrow, because tomorrow might be totally different from today. We have evidence of how chaotic things can be under this leadership, this impending leadership. We know that it can be so incredibly chaotic. And the promises to dismantle so many systems of government. And those systems help us run effectively and efficiently, which is why people believe that government has no place in their lives, because when it runs right, it should feel seamless, right? Like, when it's working, you shouldn't actually notice it. That's because it's working. But when it's in dysfunction, oh, you're going to know. And so I think it's really important to get as much of your stuff. This might be the time to just go ahead. You might be feeling great. It might be a good time to just go on and have a therapist. Just go ahead and get your squad together, right? All right, I'm not going to take up too much more time. I just want to end with this. Well, nothing in the government is going to be done with us in mind. Nothing is going to be done with the purpose of benefiting us. Not one thing. Despite all of that, there still may be opportunity, but only if we can get out of our feelings and see it. Okay. I know you'd be like, what? I'm not trying to speed up your process. Take whatever time you need, sis. Take the time you need to feel all your feels. But when you're done, open up your aperture, because there might be some unintended consequences, because they're not doing it because they want to help us, right? Like, they're not doing it because they want us to see us win, but that doesn't mean the opportunities will not exist. Find the openings and leverage them. Not all money is good money, but if there's an opportunity that comes for me, I'm taking it. I'm taking the opportunities wherever they come from. And I think the strategy moving forward, at least in this part of my process, just days later, I think the strategy is not about putting up walls, but getting very clear about our filters, right? Getting very clear about our filters. And that includes this podcast. I am downshifting for the year, tying a bow around. I've got just a few more gigs. This week is like a very busy week for me, because I'm kind of signing off on some of these gigs that I have, to get into like a quieter place. I'm going overseas. And then having a vacation on top of that. So I'm so excited about that. So we talked about doing what you love. That's going to be a part of the plan. That's going to be factored into the budget. But just really thinking, reading books, and just meditating on how to meet this moment. This podcast will. It has, after the rage subsided, purpose, deeper purpose for me emerged. And this is one of the spaces that it will manifest. I sent some text messages to a friend like, hey, if we talked about this, would you be interested in that? So things are going to come. I'm not ready. I have not fully processed it enough to discuss, but I hope when they come, you know what? Also, I'm not ready yet, but I will be in the coming weeks, like having a poll and things of that nature of, what is it that you need? What is it that you want? Would you lean into this? I would like your feedback, actually, on what it is that you need. I would really like your feedback on what it is that you need and how you're processing what you need for your next. I want all of us to get through the next 4 years and not just like limp our way through it. I want us to thrive through it. I want us to get money through it. I want us to be empowered through it. And that sounds crazy and a mess right now, but what other options do we have? I can't choose failure on the first day. I don't think you can either. And I want us to be rested through it too, joyful, like tapped into our joy. LaShasta said, mind your business. And we are very clear what our business is right now. So I want to close. Actually, I'm stealing her thunder a little bit. Octavia Rae, who, if you watch the Friday Wins on Instagram, I talked about her and tagged her. She has this book, Rest is Sacred. This is now a book that sits on my table next to my bed that I open up at night and just read a passage at a time. She's going to be on the podcast very soon, but I did want to close with one of her. And in the episode, you'll say she doesn't call it poems. She calls them sutras. And I want to end with one of her sutras on page 122. We gathered our energy when we rested with new energy, whole and intact. We ended our entanglement with disordered systems. We ended our dysfunctional relationship with the ones that told us we were the producer and the product, the ones that made our ancestors forced free labor, the ones that taught us that our only value was in our work, the same ones that treat others' disposal like throwaways and devalues our lives and even our deaths, the ones that will not accept our no's, coerce us into yes, and then deny any fault in the suffering or injury that follows. The ones that dismiss our boundaries and refuse to affirm the brilliance of our continued existence despite it all. Slow, intentional, steady. We dismantle all of that. We orient toward our innate rhythm. Slow, intentional. We receive the revelation, the memory that we are sacred, that we are brilliant, that we are unbroken. All of us. That we are unbroken. All of us. No matter what. See you next week. Thanks for listening to The Next Best Thing with Andrea Cline-Thomas, a Mountain Court Media production. The music was written, recorded, and produced by Gavin Casey, also known as Dark Purple. Now, if you like what you heard, please subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, and write a comment on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to share it with friends. I hope this episode helps you on your journey. See you next time.